Mark Rogers TV on the recruiting trail, getting you set for National Signing Day, just 10 days away and counting. We bring in Aman Kidwai from Rivals and also the UConnBlog to set us up for the Huskies. Aman, as always, we appreciate your time, and we hear that you've got some good news for Husky fans and some breaking news.
Yeah, absolutely. So just this past weekend, UConn had a big group of visitors in for their official visit. Many of them were players who had already verbally committed, but we found out this morning that 3 previously uncommitted players have now given their verbal commitment to UConn. 2 of them are expected to be specialists. So one is, he's coming in as an athlete, but he's a long snapper, and his name is Nick Zecchino. And one thing that's interesting about him is that he's actually from the same hometown as our head coach, Bob Diaco, and that's Cedar Grove, New Jersey. Yeah, he's coming in as a long snapper. And then the other specialist is a punter, and his name is Brett Graham. He's from State College High in Pennsylvania. And he plays tight end as well for his high school team, so he's pretty big for a punter. The third is, more of an on-field player. It's a guy named Noel Brouse, who is also from Pennsylvania, from Parkland High, which is actually the alma mater of Andre Williams, the former Boston College running back who's now on the Giants. Noel Brouse seems like a pretty strong commitment. He has a 3-star rating on 24/7, 2 stars on Rivals. He had previously been committed to Syracuse. He did that over the this past summer. And after Scott Schaefer was removed from the head coaching position there, he decommitted. And then actually last week he had verbally committed to Villanova. But then, UConn started to get a little bit more into the picture. He obviously came on this visit and officially got the offer this morning, and has accepted it. He's a defensive end. He's like 6'5", 250, 260, something like that. So he's your classic, space-eating defensive end in your 3-4 alignment. So yeah, pretty good news. The class is up to 17 recruits now for the class of 2016. We thought it might be a little bit smaller than that as recently as a couple of months ago, but a couple of understandably, a couple of players leave the program, so a couple of spots open up. Some of those are going to walk-ons, and some of those are going to some of these added players that they have.
So, Aman, you've got us caught up to date here, but looking at the overall class, and you say at this point it's 17 commits, who are some of those guys that we could expect to be making an impact on the field almost immediately, those guys that are expected to star out of this class?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say, it's always one of those things where depending on the position, even if it's a highly rated recruit, they may not have a chance to contribute immediately. That said, some of the players, who are at the top ratings-wise in the class, one who really stands out is a guy named Eddie Hahn. He's from Red Bank Catholic in New Jersey. A 3-star recruit on both sites. He's coming to UConn as a safety, and he played quarterback as well for his high school team, which I always think is a pretty good sign for being the best athlete in your town, for being a smart football player who has a really good understanding of the game. And we have our starting safety from last year. Andrew Adams was a graduating senior. And we're not really sure who the good options are for that spot. So I could see him potentially getting the start at safety. The rest of the defense, the rest of the secondary is pretty experienced, and maybe they think, they can slide either Eddie Hahn in there, or honestly, potentially some of the freshmen from last year who redshirted. There might be a guy or two who's in that situation. Another one who I think has a real shot at contributing early would be really the two players, the wide receivers who are coming in. One is Quavon Skanes. He's from Chicago. Just won a state title there. I believe the first public school to do so in a while, to win the city title in Chicago. 3-star prospect, offers from Northwestern, Illinois, chose UConn. He's a 5'10" kind of speedster, playmaker kind of receiver. Also can do punts and kick returns. And he actually also played quarterback for his high school team. So again, a guy who will understand the importance of running good routes, understands a wide receiver's complete role in an offense, and brings some leadership qualities as well. He has really good grades, and someone who I think has really strong potential for making immediate impact. The other wide receiver is a less heralded prospect, I would say, according to the ratings on the scouting service. We all know that while in aggregate, those scouting ratings, do tell a complete story and are important. On a player-by-player basis, they're not so important. And then especially when it's somebody from this area where the scouting services aren't really aggressively looking at players in Connecticut or Massachusetts or what have you. So that player, under the radar, who I think has a chance to contribute early, is named Keon Dixon. He played another high school quarterback, played at Glastonbury High here in Connecticut. He's 6'3". He's got great speed, great catching ability. We actually had an event through Rivals, which we ran this past summer, had a number of 3-star recruits, guys going to Michigan, Boston College, Rutgers, and Keon Dixon was one of the most talented players on the field. And again, just someone, he's been playing quarterback for his high school team, for 2 years. So no one really has a full grasp of what he can do as a receiver. But I strongly believe, you put Keon Dixon, 6'3", with track speed, put him at wide receiver for one of these powerhouse programs in New Jersey or the Virginia area or Florida, that he would be a productive player. I really do believe that. And again, the wide receiver position seems to be one where there's an opportunity for players to contribute early. So I would say those are some of the best candidates to make an early impact out of this class of 2016.
Aman Kidwai joining us from the UConnBlog and also Rifles.com. Aman, maybe some of those guys that are listing UConn on a short list, but you don't have a real good feel for right now, that if they would swing the Huskies' way and make their home in Storrs, would make it a much better class. Anybody out there like that?
Yeah, there's really just one. Because as I mentioned, we thought this would be a pretty small class. We were told, 13 to 15, basically all year, basically this entire recruiting cycle, we've been told that. And there's one spot open, and I believe it's being held open right now for a player named Izon Pulley. He is a defensive end as well from Florida, who was previously committed to Miami, the U. And then again, coaching change caused him to start looking at some other options. It is believed, but not confirmed, that he made a visit to UConn. And he is also making visits elsewhere, so we'll see. That would be a major, major coup for UConn, I would say, on the recruiting front. As a whole, this class has been really good for UConn, I would say. If you look at the ratings, look at the schools that UConn is beating out for these players, it's looking really good. And I'm sorry, I said he was from Florida. He wasn't from Florida. He was previously committed to Miami. He's actually from Olney, Maryland. He's a 3-star prospect, offers from a lot of really good schools. So I think he would be a really, really big coup for UConn in a class where they have continuously been winning. I mean, guys who I mentioned earlier, like Quavon Scanes and Eddie Hahn, they both had, a couple of Power 5 offers and chose UConn instead. A couple of other guys, Taj Herring is a cornerback from Connecticut who chose UConn over Vanderbilt in Virginia. Jay Rose is a guy, he's one of the best prospects, I think, in Connecticut. He plays quarterback for a really good team at Southington. And, he had offers from Wisconsin, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Pittsburgh, many, many other schools, and he chose UConn. So a lot of big wins for UConn in this recruiting class. And Pulley would really be, just another one who would be a really big win and potentially even the best one out of them.
Yeah, you threw out a lot of Power 5s and not just marginal Power 5s. When you toss out Miami, Wisconsin, you're talking about winning programs in big conferences. So that's a great sign right there when UConn can win the wars at times against those types of programs. Aman Kidwai joining us from the UConnBlog and also Rivals.com. Anybody else we're missing in this class that you'd like to discuss? Otherwise, we'll let you go. And hopefully, Aman, we can have you back after it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Let me think. There's a couple of players, who are definitely worth mentioning, as just standouts in the recruiting class. And really, again, it's UConn went for quality over quantity in this class, partially because of the spots that they had open, but because they knew that they could. And I think a couple of names, worth mentioning are linebacker Ryan Gilmartin. He's actually someone who also has a decent chance at getting some early playing time, maybe as a rotation player. It'll be tough with UConn's defense. The defense has always been the strong suit. We always seem to be able to reload with players, but I could see Gilmartin, because of his fit in the defense and the type of player that he is, getting some early playing time. He also had some really good FBS before choosing UConn. Mike Lonsdorf is a tackle from New Jersey who has been impressing scouts. He has a 3-star rating on 24/7. We have a scout of our own for the UConn Rivals site who was very, very impressed with Lonsdorf. He's a 6'7", 270-pound offensive tackle prospect who could potentially be a real game breaker. I mentioned Taj Herring. He's someone who I think is a really good lockdown cornerback. There's a lot. There really are, again, a lot of them. Nino Leone is a really big offensive lineman who has turned down interest, not offers or anything like that, but there was interest after he committed to UConn from Nebraska and LSU. He said, no, I'm firmly committed to UConn. Cam DeGeorge is an offensive lineman who was a former Syracuse commitment. He's from Linfield, Massachusetts. Again, big guy, 6'5", 260 pounds. Tyler Coyle is someone from Connecticut who I think is pretty underrated. He's a 6'2". He played both sides of the ball as wide receiver and defensive back. He'll be playing defensive back at UConn. Someone who I think has really great potential. But again, really just top to bottom, for relative to other UConn classes, this class appears to be a lot stronger than any of the ones that had come before it with other coaching staff. So I would say for UConn fans, a lot to be excited about.
All right. And excited after coming off the mat of 2-10 in 2014 with 6 wins and a near bowl upset of Marshall, like a 5-point game in that one. Aman Kidwai from Rivals.com and the UConnBlog. We always appreciate Aman coming on, providing the information and the insight.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.